I am so excited. I'm really excited about today. We've been planning about this, praying about this for a really long time. And if you're a guest today or just our guest online, you picked a great time to join us. If you're kind of skeptical about God, Faith Church, I'm really glad you're here. It's a great time to join us because we are starting a new series with a weird title that I'm really looking forward to. I'm excited about the series, but I'm even more excited about what we're going to do in conjunction with the series that we're starting. And there's probably been no better weekend or time to discover what Terra Nova is really all about than what we're starting right now. We're calling this series How to Be Rich, because we live in a world that's constantly telling us how to get rich, telling us that we need to get richer, have more, accumulate more, how to get more, constantly baiting us to want more. But nobody's really talking about how to be rich. In other words, once you get rich, how do you be good at being rich? And over the next few weeks, we're going to focus on a single passage of scripture, part of a letter that's found in the Bible that's directed towards rich people. The letter, if you have your Bible and you want to open it up, is called 1 Timothy 6. The title of our series is actually lifted straight out of this little section of this letter. It's a letter that's written by a guy named Paul, or the Apostle Paul, or St. Paul as he's sometimes called, to a co-worker of his named Timothy. And Timothy was this younger leader that Paul had mentored for many years. In fact, Paul was instrumental in Timothy even becoming a follower of Jesus to begin with. And over the years, Timothy has become one of Paul's most trusted colleagues, and Timothy actually co-wrote a handful of letters with Paul that made it all the way into the documents that we call the New Testament, part of the Bible. But now, years later, Timothy is leading a church himself in the ancient city of Ephesus, which was a big deal. Ephesus was the capital city of the Roman province known at the time as Asia. It's western modern-day Turkey, and Ephesus was a major city in that community. And Paul's giving his young friend Timothy advice and encouragement about how to lead in a complex environment. It was very complicated spiritually, very complicated culturally. The values of the Jesus movement just created such dissonance with the values of the ancient world, such dissonance with basic social expectations in the ancient world. And towards the end of that letter, Paul pens these words. He writes this to his friend Timothy: command those who are rich in this present world. And then he goes on to give some very specific things to rich people, which raises a question. Why? Why? I mean, think about it. Why are there sections of scripture devoted to rich people? I mean, shouldn't the Bible be for everyone? Shouldn't everything in the Bible be for everyone? Why should there be specific instructions just for the rich people? And I think the answer, evidently, is that rich people have unique issues, unique temptations, unique complications and challenges and responsibilities. And I know this is like hard for us to believe. I know, but it's difficult and challenging to be rich. I mean, rich people are set up for all kinds of troubles and struggles that non-rich people, they just don't have to deal with. And so God, who loves rich people, by the way, who loves them as much as he loves poor people. God says, hey, I want to give them some instruction. I want to instruct them in ways that will help them be good at being rich. And in the first century, that was true, and it's still true today. I mean, you know some rich people. You know some rich people, and you know the kinds of things that rich people have to deal with. For example, rich people have extra money, and rich people will save up money that they don't need to live on today. They actually have some money for tomorrow already today because they have a little bit extra, so they have money for tomorrow, but then they have to put that money somewhere, right? And so then they have to think about things like bank accounts and checking accounts and portfolios and mutual money funds and retirement. I don't know if you've ever heard of these kinds of things. And rich people sometimes they have so much extra money that they have to do something that's called financial planning or estate planning. Have you heard of this? They will actually pay people to help them plan what to do with their extra money. And there's this like a whole layer of stress that rich people have that non-rich people, they just don't have to deal with that. And you know what else? Rich people have extra food. They do, don't laugh. They have extra food and they worry about things called overeating. And they worry about having to say no to eating and no to food, and that's tough. And then they complain about that. And rich people sometimes have so much food in their house. I've seen this. I've actually seen this with my own eyes. So much food that they will actually throw old food away to make room for new food. And then they'll feel guilty about it, right? And rich people they just have to worry about things that other people they don't have to think about. And rich people have a whole lot of extra stuff. See, you're laughing. You should. There might be some of them here. I mean, just try to be nice, but they'll have whole rooms and sections of their houses and homes just for their stuff, just to put their stuff there, and they will fill these spaces with stuff, closets and cabinets and attics and garages, and then they'll run out of room for their stuff, and then they'll have to figure out ways of getting rid of old good stuff to make room for new good stuff, but they don't want to just throw it away because it's still good. It's still good. I don't want to throw it away. And they'll feel guilty, but they'll still do it because they got new good stuff and they got to make room for it. And often they will still have too much stuff. And so they will rent a separate apartment just for extra stuff. Have you heard about these? They're called storage units. There's actually a complex of these apartments just across the street. It's called Public Storage. And they'll rent an apartment just for extra stuff. People don't live there, just their stuff lives there. And these are they'll fill that apartment with their stuff. And then this just adds all this extra complexity because now all their stuff doesn't live with them. And now they have to travel down the road, sometimes quite a few ways down the road to get some of the stuff because their stuff doesn't live with them. And that's just a hassle. And then they will worry about their kids because their kids have too much stuff. And rich people will say to other rich people, I'm so worried about my kids because my kids have everything. Can you imagine hearing somebody say that? I'm so worried about my kids because my kids have everything. And then they go right home and give their kids more stuff. Because what do people with extra money do except buying more stuff for their kids? And rich people, I just tell you, there is a lot of extra social pressure that comes with it. Because when they're out with other people or they're just out and about, they have to worry about things like style and being up to date. And that's just a part of it. They don't necessarily want it to be that way. They don't like it being that way. But it just kind of is. And so rich people will often have more clothing than they actually need, and they will have whole rooms in their houses where just the clothes live. It's big enough for somebody to sleep there, but nobody sleeps there. It's just the clothes that sleep there. The clothes live there, and they'll have whole rooms in their houses, and they call them closets. And then rich people will stand in front of the closet. Now, I've never seen this. I've never seen this happen, but I've heard of it. They'll stand in front of the closet, they'll stare at this room full of clothes, and they'll say to themselves, nothing to... You've heard that too. Again, some of them might be here. Don't laugh at them, but be nice. And then rich people will they always complicate their lives unnecessarily. And it's just part of being rich. They can't help it. It's not their fault. But rich people will do things rich people will go into their kitchen and they will take out everything in their kitchen and then they'll put the same stuff back in. They'll take a refrigerator that works perfectly fine. They'll take that out and then they'll put another refrigerator back in the same place. And then they'll do that with a stove and an oven and a microwave and a sink and so forth. And then they'll rip out all of these flat surfaces. They call them counters. They're counters and they're good. I mean, they're solid. You could stand on them. They're functional. They work and they'll rip out all of those counters and they'll put in new counters. It's amazing. And then there's all this dust and debris in their homes and they'll complain about all of the construction that they created in their own home and how they have to use one of the other sinks with running water in another room of their house while they're waiting for this sink to get put back in. But they just have extra money and extra pressure, and it just creates extraordinary complexity and stress and worry. And so rich people just have layers of complexity and stress that non-rich people, they just don't have. And it hurts their marriages, and it hurts their families, it hurts their kids, it hurts their health, and they get themselves into trouble. And so God says, I need to say something to rich people because they matter to me, because I care about this. Hey, Timothy, command those who are rich in this present world. But the problem is figuring out who he's talking to. Who are all these rich people that need to hear what he's about to say? And it's difficult. It's difficult because people don't normally self-identify as rich. There's a stigma attached to that word, and nobody wants to own it, which is weird. Because if I were to say today, hey, if you're tall, would you raise your hand? If you're 6'3", you're going to raise your hand. You're not going to go, hey, there's people who are taller than me. I'm not that tall. If you're 6'1" and you don't raise your hand, your 8'9" friend is sitting next to you going, really? Really? You're not tall. Are you kidding me? And like, you would know, like, I know I'm tall. If I were to ask, hey, if you're athletic, would you raise your hand? You would probably, you'd raise your hand. Artsy people don't mind you knowing they're artsy. Outdoorsy people don't mind you knowing they're outdoorsy. Pickleball people love to talk about pickleball and let you know they're pickleball people. But if I were to ask you, hey, if you're rich, like nobody would raise their hand. Nobody would raise their hand because we all think of people who are richer than we are. And so I just want to help you out a little bit. I want to help you self-identify just in case you just might be. So how do you know if you're rich? I'm just going to throw a few numbers out, spend some time this week looking up some stuff, doing some calculations, some actual mathematics going on. And here are some basic numbers for you. Here's just a few numbers. The median global household income, that means all of the incomes within the house combined, is roughly about $10,000 a year. Now, just so you know, that's adjusted up a little bit, and it's adjusted for something they talk about called purchase power. So different currencies, different things cost different amounts of money in different places. So it's like purchase power adjusted to US dollars. So it's actually adjusted up quite a bit. But the average median global household income, about $10,000 a year. Median US household income, $60,000 a year. That's 6 times more. And again, adjusted for purchase power, if there are 4, and that's household, everybody in your house earned income per year. If there are 4 people in that house, and that's your gross income after taxes net in California, you are still in the top 12% of the world's population. If your household income, U.S. median household income, $60,000 gross. And if that's your income and it's one person in your household, you're actually in the top 2% of the world's richest people. But you don't just live in the U.S. You live in Orange County. And the median Orange County household income is, get this, $90,000 a year. And again, in a household of 4, that puts you, if you're just, and that's all combined household income, everybody who's earning anything, that puts you in the top 7% of the world's population. But that doesn't quite tell the whole story, because wealth in this world is not evenly distributed. In fact, the top 12% of the world's wealthiest people have 85% of the world's wealth, and 55% of the world's population have 1% of the world's wealth. And here's what that means. In other words, if we could take your standard of living, whatever it is, like your job right now, your apartment, your home, your car or cars, all of your technology, your smart TV, your game system, your phone, like your refrigerator and cabinets full of food, your closet full of clothes, your bed and your pillow is so soft, it's so awesome, your utilities, your running water, your electricity, your checking account, the money in your wallet, a little bit of change in a dish somewhere, and your education and your opportunities, like your whole lifestyle, everything that makes up your lifestyle. And if it were possible to extract that intact and plop it down anywhere else on the planet, you would probably be the richest person there. You would be the richest person on the block, the richest person in the neighborhood. You would be the richest person in the village almost every single time, and almost like hands down. And you would feel rich. Almost like, in some cases, like embarrassingly so. But you don't live in that village, do you? You don't live in that village. You live in Orange County. And consequently, you could be rich and not know it and not feel it at all. And the problem with that is, as long as we don't feel rich, we won't believe we are rich, and so we won't act rich or learn how to be rich. And the danger is, we all might just keep trying to get rich and get richer and continue to act poor, to continue to act like we are not responsible for extraordinary wealth, for a disproportionate percentage of the world's wealth and resources, even though many of us probably have already crossed the line from not rich to rich. Now, as I'm saying that, quick disclaimer, I understand. I understand that there are people here who are hurting financially. There are people here who are unemployed or underemployed, and people who are just, you are struggling to make ends meet. And you look at some of those numbers and you're like, average median household, 60,000. That would be amazing. I wish that were true. That would be nice. But the truth is, the majority of us today, even those of us in some difficult straits, the majority of us are still among some of the wealthiest people in the world and the wealthiest people in the history of human civilization. So for the next couple weeks, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this and what it means for us to be among the wealthiest people in the world and how the richest people in the world just might live as followers of Jesus. Because it is one thing to be rich. It is another to be good at it. And we've all seen rich people who are bad at it, right? I mean, we've all seen rich people on the news or on talk shows or like reality TV shows or TMZ or whatever, wallpapered with their stories. And they're all entitled and spoiled and, in and out of divorce court and rehab and spending it all on themselves and like blowing through it all. Sports Illustrated says that 78% of NFL players are bankrupt or strained financially within 2 years of retiring from the NFL. 68% of NBA players are broke within 5 years. And you hear something like that and you're like, If I had that kind of money, I'd be good. I'd be good at being rich. And I've had people say to me so many times over the years, if I ever get some money, I'm going to give. If I ever get rich, if I ever get more, I am just going to give. I'm going to give. But you know what the studies show? The studies show consistently that the more Americans make, the less they give. The more people make, the less they give. Here are a couple of examples. U.S. households where the combined household income is below $50,000 a year. That puts them below that median. Below $50,000 a year, U.S. household, average charitable giving is 8%. It's like, wow, that's pretty good. Income of $100,000, U.S. households with incomes of $100,000, average charitable giving drops to 2.9%. From 8%. You're like, how did that happen? They have so much more. And the higher the income goes, the lower the percentage of giving. See, it's one thing to have it. It's one thing to have extra. It's another to be good at it. And we want to be good at it, don't we? And that's why I'm so excited over the next few weeks that we're not just going to talk about this. We're actually going to do something about it. We're going to, check this out, we're going to practice being good at being rich just in case you ever get rich so you'll know how to do it. We're actually going to practice how to do it, how to be good at being rich. And here's why this is so incredibly important to me and to us as a church, because no strings attached. Are you kidding me? Compassion and generosity have been hallmarks of the Jesus movement from the very beginning. Let me say that again. No strings attached. Are you kidding me right now? Compassion and generosity have been the hallmarks of the Jesus movement from the very beginning. The defining attributes of the followers of Jesus from the beginning of that movement were compassion and generosity. For the first few centuries, Christians were misunderstood, they were ostracized, marginalized, they were persecuted, fed to lions, lit on fire, beheaded, crucified, and yet the movement actually continued to grow rapidly. And many historians have studied why that is. Historians like Rodney Stark or Paul Johnson, Larry Hurtado, Alvin Schmidt, and many others have studied how could that be? In a context like that, for it to grow, and that's just a matter of historical fact. They can see how it grew, count it. And they say the thing that made this movement so compelling and so attractive and irresistible, it was not its wealth. So many of them did not have any wealth. It was not their influence and popularity. They had the absence of influence and popularity. It was not their beliefs in theology. Their beliefs in theology were considered weird. Okay, you worship a crucified God? Do you hear yourself? That's ridiculous. If the Romans crucified your God, that means the Romans' gods are powerful, more powerful than your, like, what are you even doing? Their beliefs and theology made no sense. Their morals were strange, but it was their no strings attached. Are you kidding me? Compassion and generosity. That though they had little, they gave much. Though they were frequently mistreated, they treated others incredibly, incredibly well. And they took their cue from, not surprisingly, Jesus. Jesus and his life and teaching. And Jesus told a story once of a man who was a victim of racism, who stopped to help a man who was a victim of a violent crime. And in this particular story, the man that he stopped to help was a man that would have shunned him if he were not unconscious. And he didn't just stop to help him. He showered on him, no strings attached. Are you kidding me? Like out of this world, head shaking compassion and generosity. And the people who heard this story are leaning in going, are you kidding me? Like who would do that? Jesus, that story isn't even realistic. And Jesus at the end of that story says, that's what it means to be a neighbor. And Jesus redefined the whole idea of what it means to be neighbors of one another and who actually is your neighbor. And then Jesus said things like this. Check this out. He said, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Like attaboys, pat on your back. What do you get for doing that? Even sinners, people who aren't even trying to be good, they love people who love them. And if you do good to people who are like so awesome to you and kind to you, again, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend and give money and help people out from whom you expect repayment, what credit to that is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. In other words, hey, everybody loves people who love them. In fact, do you know what the number one determinant is that you will like somebody? That they like you. It's true. Somebody thinks you're awesome, you're like, hey, they have pretty good taste. I think I like them too. Everybody loves people who love them. Everybody does good to people who are always doing good to them. And everybody is willing to help somebody out when they know it's coming back to them. But you, Jesus says, you love and you do good and you lend and you help and you care, no strings attached. Now, this is huge. This is huge because all exchanges in the Greco-Roman world, in the ancient world, were governed by an idea. This is a Roman word, liberalitas. Liberalitas, and liberalitas basically defined as something like this: giving to please the recipient with the expectation that they would later bestow a favor upon the giver. So the idea is you find somebody who can do something for you, usually somebody wealthier. In fact, wealthy people are often the recipients of this. And you do something for them first, and you get them on your side. And then when you need something, see, they're going to owe you. It's favor for a favor. It's quid pro quo. And this, by the way, liberalitas was the foundation of a fundamental social system in the first century, first, second, third, and so forth, Greco-Roman world called patronage. Patronage worked like this. Wealthy people, the patrons, would do something helpful for poorer people who were their clients. And they would do that so that the client would then owe them. They would owe them honor or gratitude or social assistance and other social assistance, that is in climbing the social ladder and so forth, and vice versa. Poor people would do things for patrons for the same reason. So the favor would be reversed. Roman emperors used to print coins with the word liberalitas on them, and they would ride through the streets tossing the coins into the streets, and the implicit message was, now you owe me. Now you owe me your honor, your loyalty, your praise. Theirs was a society that was always aware of who owes who. Very, very conscious of who owes who and who do I owe. And so it just made no sense at all to do things for other people who could not or would not ever, ever be able to do anything back for you. That was ridiculous, and maybe worse. It was considered at times dangerous. It was dangerous to do that because that was socially disruptive. And then Jesus shows up and he says this, you know what? My kingdom, it's not of this world. My kingdom is not like this world. In my kingdom, things are not that way. In my kingdom, you give expecting nothing in return. And you do this for other people who cannot, and in fact, who would not ever do anything for you in return. In fact, look how far he took it. He goes on to say, but you love your enemies. You love your enemies, and you do good things to them, and you help them, and you lend them, here's the phrase, without expecting to get anything back. Enemies, he says. I mean, talk about somebody who's not going to do anything back good for you, right? And the idea here in what he says is Jesus creates a category that's just so extreme that it includes everything else in the middle. So he's like, hey, there are people who love you and think you're awesome and they do good to you. And then there are enemies who do not love you. I almost put frowning faces on these. Who do not love you and they actually do bad to you. And then there's everybody else in the middle. And Jesus says, I want you to have a love. I want you to have a love, a kindness, a generosity that includes not only your friends, but even your enemies and everybody else in between. And this is different. Oh man, this is different. No strings attached. Are you kidding me? Compassion and generosity. And Jesus says, and then when you're loving people and you're doing really good things for them and you're helping them through things that they can't seem to get through and they hate you and they're never going to do anything good back for you, when you are loving and doing good like that, then your reward will be great and you will be children of the Most High. You will be like father, like daughter. You'll be like father, like son of the Most High God because He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. He bestows kindness on people who do not love Him, do not appreciate Him, and will not ever give anything back to Him. In fact, God so consistently does that it bugs us and annoys us, right? And we look around at people who are not good people and good things happen to them and we're like, I don't get it, God. And God says, actually, it's kind of how I am. And by the way, if you want to look like me, you kind of got to be that way too. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. And Jesus says, I'm creating something completely new. This isn't like what it was. This isn't like your value system. A whole new value system. You give and you do good to those who cannot and will not ever do anything back for you, and you won't get anything out of it, and you just show compassion to those who haven't even shown compassion to you, and you do that because that's what your Heavenly Father has done for you. And the followers of Jesus hijacked a value that wasn't really even a value in the ancient world called caritas, from which we get the word charity. It's a very different idea than liberalitas. And caritas was this idea of giving to relieve the pain or distress of somebody who was going through difficulty without expecting anything back from them in return. And they hijacked this value and they made it their own. And so over the years, as plagues swept through Europe and the Mediterranean worlds in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, Christians, while everybody was running out of town, and priests were often the first ones out because they were, in their culture, it's very different than we think of priests like Catholic priests. They were often the wealthiest, hands down, the wealthiest, most elite people in the town, the people who worked in the temples. And they would be like the first ones out, and they were getting out of town as these plagues swept through the towns. And Christians not only would not leave the towns, they would actually move into towns where people were known to be sick and dying and nurse back to health not only their own fellow followers of Jesus, but total strangers and the poor and the elderly and people who had made fun of them and people who had turned them to the authorities, and they would nurse them back to health, according to some historians, sometimes dying in their stead, as we can imagine, as they got infected with the disease. And you can imagine that those who were surviving the plagues because they were being cared for well, as their health began to return, they wanted to know, why? Are you kidding me? No strings attached, compassion and generosity. Then just jumping forward in 313, Constantine, you probably heard of this, issued what was called the Edict of Milan, legalizing all religion. He didn't make Roman Empire Christian. He was an edict of tolerance, of religious tolerance. He legalized all religion. It just meant Christianity wasn't against the law anymore. But by that time, Christianity underground had grown so rapidly that it was actually the dominant religious, philosophical, whatever you want to call it, movement in the world. Then 25 years later, Constantine's grandson, Emperor Julian, tried to return the Roman Empire to its pagan roots, to its Greco-Roman, polytheistic, the pantheon of gods, polytheistic pagan roots. And he funded the renovation of temples that had gone into disrepair because nobody was visiting them anymore and so forth. And he mandated that everybody in the empire began sacrificing again to the gods, but it wasn't working. And people were not doing it, and he was frustrated. And so he wrote a letter to one of the high priests in Galatia, which was modern-day Turkey, complaining about this. And in this letter, such an interesting letter, but in this letter, part of the letter, he writes this. He goes, I think what happened was, I think that when the poor happened to be neglected and overlooked by the priests, that is the priests of our temples, the impious Galileans, that's what he referred to, this Christian cult, this Christian movement. They were the Galileans, and he calls them impious because they didn't worship the gods. And piety had to do with your honor in terms of respecting all of the gods, and they didn't do that, so he refers to them as impious. Impious Galileans, they saw that our poor were being overlooked. They observed this, and they devoted themselves to benevolence. And that really bothers Julian, like those sneaky Christians who devote themselves to caritas because they know we're not doing it. And then he adds this thought a little bit later. He says, the impious Galileans, he goes, think about this. They support not only their poor, but ours as well, as everyone can see our people lack aid from us. It was no strings attached. Are you kidding me? Generosity of the Jesus movement that really, really changed the world. And there are many, many examples of this. I'll give you one more because that is nowhere more true and more obvious than when it came to children. Now, childhood, you need to know, was not valued in the ancient world. There was no protected, special, treasured class called children or childhood. They were just little adults, and frankly, available for anything an adult was available for. And children, just like the poor or the elderly or the sick, they were considered as people who drained more than they contributed. And so, very, very frequently, if a family had more children than they could afford, and often in Greco-Roman culture that was more than one or two, they would sell or give away or marry off their children. They would marry off their little girls almost always pre-adolescence. I mean, think about that. And then newborns, particularly newborn girls, were frequently discarded. It was called being exposed. And they were taken to sewers or dumping grounds or garbage dumps and so forth, and they were just simply left there. And then nefarious sorts of people who knew about this would troll these sites, and if they found a baby that was still alive and still healthy, they would take that baby and raise that baby to be a slave or a prostitute to fill the brothels of the cities in the Mediterranean world and the temples in the Mediterranean world. And Christians began to rescue these babies. Now, this is unthinkable. They began to go to these places and rescue these babies and adopt them as their own, as their very own flesh and blood, and raise them as their own children. Now, I could talk about this for a while because adoption was not done for children in the ancient world. You adopted an adult who would be your heir, who you already knew who turned out well, because your kids didn't because you ruined them. And then you're like, well, I'm not giving you anything. But this guy over here, he's turned out pretty well. I'm adopting him. He's 27. He's going to be my heir. That's who you adopted. You didn't adopt children. Adopt a child? Are you kidding me? Why? Who would do that? No strings attached. Are you kidding me? Compassion and generosity. It was stupefying in the ancient world. That has been the hallmarks of the Jesus movement from the very beginning. It was their compassion and their generosity, not their theology, not their morality, not their political voice or their political domination. Are you kidding me? It was their compassion and generosity that allowed the Jesus movement to not only survive and make it through the first and then the second and then third centuries, but to actually thrive and grow in influence and grow in influence until it had actually changed the world. And I believe that in our day, the same is true for us. And so today, we're launching not just a new teaching series, we're launching a campaign of generosity and service and love, something that we are going to do together because we can do so much more together than any one of us ever would or could do alone. That is the power of the ecclesia, the followers of Jesus gathered together. And there are three components to this. We're calling them simply give, serve, love. Give, serve, love. And we've been putting together a list of some incredible opportunities. We've been thinking about this for some time and putting our minds to this for a while. The first piece I want to talk to you about is the give piece. And we're going to talk about extraordinary. You know what extraordinary means, right? Beyond normal. So you got ordinary, then you got extraordinary. We're going to talk about extraordinary generosity for a second. So here's some of the things we're going to do. We're going to do what we're calling wheelchairs to Egypt. We are going to purchase and ship a shipping container, partnering with Free Wheelchair Mission and an organization called NEO, Near East organization that works in the Middle East. And whoa, what they're going through right now, wow, they are lights out. We've been working with them for years. They're amazing, amazing people, what they do. And we're going to bring them a shipping container of wheelchairs, 550 wheelchairs into Egypt. Now, we've been wanting to do this for a long time. We've actually been talking about trying to figure out ways to get it into Egypt for a while because the poverty and the levels of disability where they live and work, where they're making a difference, and then the shame and the treatment of disabled people in this community. Friends, this is going to be life-changing. This is going to be family-changing. It will probably be eternity-changing. And we're going to send a shipping container to Egypt, and then potentially, check this out, more to come on this, a team of people of Terra Novans to go over there and help deliver them. That might be kind of cool, right? In 2022, so stay tuned for that. So that's the first thing. That's kind of new. We've never done anything quite like that to that place before. The next thing isn't new at all. It's called Kids Feeding Kids. This is something we've done many times, but it's been a while. Because of COVID, we haven't done this in a while, and we're partnering with a wonderful organization called Kids Around the World to purchase and package 50,000 meals for orphanages in Africa. And so we're going to fund that and do that. And then the third thing is just really cool. It's smaller. It's a local thing, but we're calling it Love in a Cup. And we're partnering with a local school, Olivewood Elementary, that is a local, very under-resourced, a much poorer school in our school district, to gift every teacher there with this Love in a Cup gift. There are these tumblers that we're going to put together, packed with all kinds of little cool things, and a $50 Staples card, which, by the way, is the money item. That's what they want. Great, thank you for the Cliff Bar. But who doesn't love a Cliff Bar? Okay, so we're going to put these all together, and we're going to give them to every single teacher at Olivewood Elementary. Isn't that cool? And by the way, if you're a teacher not at Olivewood Elementary and you would like us to do this at your school and you would put skin in the game and help make it happen, talk to us, because we would like to do this for more schools as well. We already have a great relationship with Olivewood Elementary, so that was easy. And then comes another category, and this one has come up upon us because after we had planned much of this, there was an earthquake in Haiti, and then we've all been watching the news of what has gone down in Afghanistan, and we have absolutely no doubt that the timing of what we're doing right now is meant to extend to some of these areas of need as well. And so we're too early into this for me to go, and here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're going to do. We have some very promising irons in the fire. We have relationships with people who are doing really, really good things. We're kind of waiting for best idea wins and they're already getting back to us. But here's the thing. We want to write some of these groups some big checks, like not golf clap checks, like, oh, thank you. We want to write like some are you kidding me right now checks to help them get through some things that they might do that are just amazing. And we just want to get back behind them and be like winning their sales. And so more to come on that. But here's what this amounts to. We are going to raise $60,000 in the next 3 months, above and beyond everything we already give, above and beyond. And then we're just going to give it all away. We're going to give every single penny of it away. And we want every single person, including those of you who are watching, we want every single person to participate and to be a part of this and to give extra, which means if you normally don't give anything, you're going to give something. And if you normally give, like I usually give 10, you're going to give like 20, 30, 50, like to give and to give extra. Now, here's the deal. Normally we say, hey, we don't want you to feel any pressure to give. You've heard us say that. Normally we say things like, hey, if you're our guest, man, you don't have to give. That's cool. We got you. But in this series, I don't mind saying, hey, I want you to give. And I want you to give extra. And if you're a guest, I'd love for you to jump in and join us too. And here's why. This is important. Because we aren't keeping a penny. Now, I'm talking no shipping and handling fee, no administrative fee. We're not skimming anything off the top. 100% of what you give for Be Rich is going to go to these wonderful causes and these wonderful partners. Even if you blow our little goal up and it becomes double or triple that, we are going to give every single penny of it away. And one of the beautiful things that I've just been smiling about the last few weeks, if we've been thinking about this, one of the beautiful things about the generosity of our community, the Terra Nova community, is we're good. We're good. Our bills are getting paid. Our staff is, like, our lights are on, our rent is paid. We're good. In fact, we're better than good. We're okay. And this isn't, hey, we need you to give to the church because the church is hurting and we're about to have to start firing people. Like, this isn't that message. And I'm so glad it isn't that message, that I could straight up say, we're good and we're not keeping a penny of it. This isn't actually for us at all. And if you've never given to church before, you're like, maybe that's like a badge of honor. Well, I'd never give my money to a church. Guess what? You can still give to this, and your street credit will still be intact, because you still will not have given to a church. You will have given through a church, because we're not going to keep a penny of it. So I don't mind saying, hey, over these next few weeks as we talk about this, I want you to think and pray and feel something and actually step in, and maybe step in at a level that scares you a little bit, is bigger than what you might think you might do. And we're going to do this. But here's the deal. This isn't just about financial generosity. Here's where it gets kind of fun. We're going to put some skin on this as well. And so the second piece is the serve piece. And just like the giving piece, we're talking about extraordinary, that is beyond normal service. And so there are things that we often do to serve, but this is going to be actually a little bit more than that. So the first thing that we've already been talking about, because we were like, well, we probably need to talk about this before the series starts, because it's going to come up really quick when the series starts. So we've already been talking about the Serve Day at the Abbey, where we're partnering with the Orange County Rescue Mission to prepare this new property they've got here in Lake Forest, just up above us a ways, for receiving residents, homeless and near homeless people in our community. And we're going to help them. We've done one. We'll probably do a handful more. And you can jump in just by writing Serve Day on your Connect card right now. So Lyle mentioned to you that card that you can tear off, or you can fill that out on the app, and you can jump in and go, hey, that's this Saturday. I'm going to do that. I'm going to put my own skin in the game. And then the next opportunity coming up after that is something we've also done a number of times. We have meal teams that serve at Orange County Rescue Mission's Village of Hope every third Saturday of the month. And the next one coming up after that is Saturday, September 18th. And we got two teams that go in. One prepares the meal, gets it all ready, cooks it and such. And then the next team comes in and serves it. And over the last year or so, that crew of that pool of folks that go, hey, I'm in. I'll do that. I'll serve there, has taken a pretty big hit. And so this is the time where we're going, you know what? This is who we are, and we're going to rebuild and refresh and that team, because we just want to do that really well. And so you can write Village of Hope or VOH on your Connect card and get into play on that. The third thing is another thing we've done before, Kids Feeding Kids. I mentioned the giving part of it. But then on Friday and Saturday, October 1st and 2nd, a couple hundred of us, maybe even more, are going to fill up our parking lot right outside here. Friday night, we're serving pizza. And then Saturday, we've got donuts and coffee going. We're going to have two different shifts, Friday night and Saturday night. And listen, you can invite your school class. You can invite your Boy Scout, Girl Scout crew. You can invite your work group, your friend group, your soccer team, people who would never darken the door of the church, go like, I don't even want to go to church. But they might come and do this with us, and you just invite them. And we are going to package 50,000 meals together, and that's going to be awesome. And then the very next weekend, we're doing a blood drive with Livestream, and it's going to be before and after all of our regular weekend services. And you can't sign up for that just yet. We're going to give you more information, because we're going to have to pre-register people. It's a little more than writing it on your Connect card. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up. Then the last option I'm really kind of pumped about, we're simply calling it free community meals. This will be on Monday nights from September through November and into December coming up. And here's what we're doing. We're partnering with our next door neighbor, South County Outreach, to provide a weekly free dinner every Monday night right here for anyone and everyone in our community, homeless, near homeless, people who just want to eat with someone. We're going to provide a meal here every single Monday night during the fall and winter of 2021. And our next door neighbor, the executive director there, Laval, has been talking about this idea he's got. He was like, man, I need to sit down and share this with you. And his idea is of churches opening up their doors to people in our community that need a meal to eat. Practicing, here's what's on his mind, not just generosity, but hospitality. Like, where do you go in our world today to invite people in? How do we practice hospitality? He goes, how do I get this? How can we do this together? And we're the first church he came to, which, like, he didn't have to walk far. Okay, so he popped in and goes, this was a while ago, like, how can we do this together? Now, they're going to be working with local partners to provide the meals that are going to be fully prepared, cooked, everything's done, linens, like everything that's part of it except chairs, tables, room, and people. And so his vision is, what would it look like if we had a couple churches doing this and like some of their people came and then people were just invited in. Whoever might want to come will be on there. Like, we'll figure it. Anyway, I don't want to take too long explaining this, but like, how can we do this? Could we do this? And we thought, you know what? If we can, we're in. Like, if there is a way, we're going to do it with you. And so we're looking to build, first of all, a team of people who will eat. So if you like to eat, and you're willing to show up like once a month, it's going to be good food. If you want to eat, so like I can show up once a month, I can come. Like, if anybody else is here, like I can have conversations, I can get to know people once a month or so, maybe even more. You're not like, and then we're looking for a small team of people who will help coordinate the details. Now, again, most of the details are already taken care of by our neighbor South County Outreach, but we want a small group of people who will own it. Okay, and so you can sign up for this in two different ways. It's on your flyer, by the way, and on the app. If you're taking notes on the app, you can sign up either for that, hey, I'll come once a month or more maybe, or I'll be a part of that small team and help coordinate the details. And we'll be talking about more of this as it goes on too. Finally, one last piece, and that's the love piece. And here's where we make it a little more personal, because it's like, hey, we're doing things for like around the world, and Egypt and Afghanistan and in our county, and folks who are struggling with homelessness or near homelessness. And then there's people in your orbit. There's the people who live next to you, who work near you. And here's what we want you to do. In your program, there is a flyer. It looks like this. It's called Be Rich, Love Your Neighbor. And here's how it works. I want you to take some time over the next few weeks. It'll be in your program for a few weeks. You can do it right now if you want to, if some comes to mind. And think and pray about people in your orbit who could just use a little love. Maybe they're hurting. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just hurting emotionally. There are things going on, and they could just use a little bit of love and encouragement, a little bit of assistance. Maybe like, hey, if we could just send them some flowers, or if I could pick up some groceries or something like that. You describe what your idea is and how much you think it'll cost, and we will work with you and fund that for you so that you can actually put your skin on Jesus. Now, by the way, I'll just say, you're the one doing it. Every time we do this, somebody goes, well, I want you to do it. I'm like, you want me to do it? Like, I got like 75, you got one. Like, no, you do it. That's the whole point, is like, you do your, does that make sense? I hope that's not stunning. Do I seem uncompassionate when I say that? Like, no, this is the whole thing. The whole idea is that you're actually going to do this, not me. So I'll do my own people. So there you go. So think about that. Pray about that. That'll be in your program for the next few weeks. And you can also just, we'll figure out a way to get it on the app. It's not on the app right now. But here's the deal. I want you to sign up. I want you to jump in. This is everyone plays, everyone who doesn't even normally play. I want you to give, and I want you to give generously, even if you don't normally give. Why? Because we're rich. Because we're rich. We have less than some and more than most. And because God gave something to us, like father, like daughter, like father, like son. And God says, I want you to look like me. And here's how I look. The best way to look like me is to do for others who cannot and will not ever necessarily do anything back for you, just as I have done for you. And that's how to be rich. Do not miss next week in part 2 as we do this together. Let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for your grace, for your kindness, for your mercy towards us when we did not deserve it and we're not doing anything back for you because of who you are. You are merciful. And thank you that we were born when we're born in history and where we have been born in history, that we did not deserve or do anything to gain for ourselves. We just showed up here and are surrounded by abundance that others are not surrounded by. And so together, we want to show compassion and generosity to our world as your followers have done for centuries, to extend the influence of your kingdom and your goodness into the world that is desperate for that right now. And so we pray that you would use us as we step up and say, here I am. And I pray that in Jesus' name, amen. Well, hey, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for watching online. Don't tune off just yet. We'd love to hear from you. I mentioned this Connect card that's in your program physically. If you're here, of course, you know there is one online as well. And I told you about a bunch of things you can write on it. Serve Day, Village of Hope, KFK, Kids Feeding Kids, free community meals. And so please take a moment, tear that off or fill it out on the app or online. Write in some of that. Let us know you're thinking about it. Maybe you will have more questions about any of that. I skimmed through a whole bunch of it. And if there's anything to pray about for you, please let us know about that. And you can throw that Connect card in the basket. You can also throw this flyer if you've already started working on it in the basket. And you can throw your giving envelope in the basket. And by the way, we have a pull-down menu for Be Rich. Everything that you give in that category is going away. So if you want to start doing that now and you go, you know what? I feel rich. I'm about to jump in. You can give on the app. You can give online using Be Rich. You'll just see it in the pull down menu. You can write it on your envelope. You can write it on your check. Just let us know. And everything you start giving right now is going to go to these incredible causes and these opportunities we have. And you can put that in the basket on your way out to, or of course, if you're watching online, you just click submit. Again, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have just a rich, blessed, generous week, and we'll see you back next weekend for part 2 of How to Be Rich. Have a great week.